In Sri Aurobindo's view, the sacrifice on the part of humanity is ongoing and inevitable as human beings interact with all around them. Through our lives and interactions, we give various capacities of ourselves and in exchange receive from our surroundings. Sri Aurobindo describes the purpose underlying this action as being, it's only by giving and receiving that we can progress, that we can grow. In addition, Sri Aurobindo addresses both the level of awareness and the spirit in which the sacrifice is made. He observes that an egoistic or unconscious sacrifice leads only to limited reward, whereas conscious sacrifice offered with love for the divine and commitment to the divine leads to true joy and fulfillment. The underlying purpose of conscious sacrifice, true self-offering, is expressed in his statement, "All true love and all sacrifice are in their essence nature's contradiction of the primary egoism and its separative error. It is nature's hurt, meaning nature's attempt to turn from a necessary first fragmentation towards a recovered oneness." I think that's just so wonderful that we participate in sacrifice by our very lives and existence. And this is very consistent with what we've been studying in the Gita, that we have no choice but to, as long as we live and breathe, we're participating in this constant interchange. And it seems to me that to the extent we do so consciously, that to the extent that we consciously offer and sacrifice to the divine, we deepen and enrich our experience of life in the world and our consciousness to a vast degree, and that otherwise we're living very much in our surface nature and a rather superficial existence if we don't have the blessing of this awareness of sacrifice.
Martha, can I just maybe interject here, because this particular sentence out of the entire, and I didn't realize you wrote this article?
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. This particular one was very profound to me, and for a couple of reasons. So I'd love to get your thoughts and your input, because what it said to me, and sort of the hope, right? Because sacrifice, as we have been kind of talking about it through the Gita, it's a total surrender to the divine, and you were just mentioning that. But when I read this, as it says all sacrifice, it almost makes it more accessible, because total surrender is very, very challenging. And by saying all sacrifice, that made me think, in this whole idea of the exchange and the giving and receiving, that to start with, we can simply be offering or surrendering ourselves to someone else. It may be a dear one, it may be a family member, maybe a neighbor in need, but this kind of moving past our own ego and helping or giving, if you will, to someone else can be the start of this eventual total surrender to the divine. And I just like kind of your thoughts and input on that, but it kind of like gave me, whew, okay, maybe this is possible.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to see it, Radha. I think that's very true. We begin where we are, with whatever level of consciousness we are, and we hope, ideally, eventually, to see the divine in all, because we know, at least on the intellectual level, that the concept of Brahman is truth, and that the divine presence is in everything and in all beings. So I certainly offering, I guess I'll get a little Christian here, as Christ said, do whatever you do to the least of these, you do for me. So that's very much consistent with the concept of Brahman, and that the divine being in all, whatever we offer, however we can, it serves to increase the connection with the divine, which is ultimately what is transforming to our nature. So we need to deepen that connection to make it more living, more real, and more concrete. So we start with where we are, and it progresses from there. So I think that's a very important observation, because complete surrender to the divine is beyond most of us in our conception of our lives, in our general daily life. We want what we want. We want to have lunch. We want to have breakfast. We want to have dinner. We want a lot of things. And well, if we offer that, the progression will grow. The connection, the affinity, the intimacy, and bond with the divine will grow. And then we will grow into the capability of full surrender. But it's a progressive thing.
Thank you. Thank you. That really helps. Appreciate it, Martha.
Thank you. I think you've offered a very nice inroad to all that experience and to deepening the sadhana, really. So I'll go back to my paper a little bit here, and then I'm happy to discuss at any point. But and this point that I'm coming to now very much connects with what you were just saying, Radhe, that Sri Aurobindo explains the importance of offering all aspects of life and action, the mundane and ordinary, as well as one's inner aspirations and higher thoughts and deeds. Doing so enables the offering to become integral and complete. And as we grow in devotion and intimacy with the divine, we're able to do even more of that. It assists in the realization that not only is all contained within the divine, but also that the divine is in all and the divine is all. When the offering becomes full and integral, an offering of all one's thoughts, feelings, aspirations, and actions, a true and sincere sacrifice of all the parts of the being, it leads to identification with and union with the divine. There are three important results of the sacrifice, of the practice of sacrifice, which Sri Aurobindo details. The first of these is devotion for the divine, which can be cultivated and developed through the discipline of sacrifice. Sri Aurobindo states that our self-offering, even without devotion, leads ultimately to true devotion. So it is all progressive. This is because the offering of one's actions develops an ongoing connection with the divine that grows in closeness and intimacy. Ultimately, this relationship deepens and grows into a profound love for the divine, thus becoming the yoga of love as well as the yoga of works. This intense, all-encompassing awareness of the divine leads to a knowledge beyond ordinary human perception and mental capacity. The complete consecration of one's being, heart, mind, will, and actions to the divine, and an abandonment of egoism is the third result of the practice of sacrifice. All sense of a separate self must be dissolved. One must live only for the divine. That is our ideal when we enter the path of yoga, but it is progressive. We just certainly do not get there in a few years. Accordingly, all action will ultimately be done in the service of the divine, for love of the divine, and as a selfless offering to the divine alone. In their combined action, the three results of sacrifice, love for the divine, knowledge of the divine, and consecration of the entire being to the divine, come together to form the triune path. This is the path of yoga based on work as an offering to the divine and infused with the power of love and devotion, and informed and enriched by the power of knowledge. In this threefold path, the three aspects merge, support, and become one in their progress. The triune path ultimately leads to the true goal of existence, union with the divine. So Sri Aurobindo's use of the term sacrifice is fully in harmony with its original and literal meaning, which is to make holy, to make sacred. So the essay continues to go on with some aspects of transformation, which somewhat exceed where we are in our discussion in the Gita. But so I'll cite a few more passages from it. In consonance with the components of the triune path, Sri Aurobindo conceptualizes work itself as threefold: the works of knowledge, the works of love, the works of the will in life. It is the progressive offering of these three to the divine that the being advances from its lower ordinary self to its high spiritualized self. So I think this is it's an important recognition from the synthesis of yoga, and very much in harmony with what we're studying in the Gita about the significance of sacrifice. I think we need to remember that it doesn't mean any sense of agony or suffering on the part of the human individual. It's offering, it's making holy by offering our works, our lives, all our actions in service to the divine. And it can begin mechanically. I think Sri Aurobindo mentions that and somewhat stresses it in Essays on the Gita. Synthesis of Yoga. It can begin mechanically with an aspiration to make it more complete and more genuine. And then that aspiration will be fulfilled in time. It takes deepening of practice. It takes increasing sincerity of aspiration, and then it develops as. And also, it's Sri Aurobindo points out very much so that it consistent with the message from the Gita that we're not to withdraw from works. Work and action done in offering to the divine, we're freed from the consequences of that, from the karmic consequences for those actions, to the extent that this is fully offered. That's an important caveat, I think. But this liberation is ultimately achievable, and it's a beautiful message from the Gita and also from Sri Aurobindo in the synthesis of yoga.
Yeah, wonderful. There are more impressions from what I received. He's dealing with the religion, it's very important, and with asceticism, how he looks at it, and then at the end how he says that every path is to be considered only as provisional, actually, not as a major path. Everything helps as long as it helps to proceed on the path and to get the experience. But until the supramental is realized and fulfilled in our life, we are not safe from any bypassing, any deviation, any stumblings, because we live in this nature, in nature of the mind, vital and body, and they are part of the bigger nature. And there are many forces in this nature which may enter in the name of the divine, or in the name of the better path, or better solution, or faster solution, or anything. And we see these pitfalls. They are mentioned also in Savitri and in the Veda as misleading dawns. Yes, there could be misleading dawns. So the path is quite an adventure in a way towards the divine.
Yes, it's wonderful that Sri Aurobindo knows human nature perfectly well. He knows all the traps that and obstacles that we may fall prey to. Yet we have, for the transformation of our nature to be complete, we have to engage in life in the world. We have to take all those chances, and we have to soldier through somehow and meet those challenges, whatever the nature of them. and ultimately will triumph. It may take many, many lives, but that's our job. That's why we're here.
Otherwise, we would never realize the divine in pure sense. And even that, what people find through Advaitic way, and usually that is accepted because this path is so difficult to transform nature that many of those great sadhaks in the past decided to bypass this path and go straight to the spirit and dissolve themselves in the spirit. Somewhere he says about this that he is not sure that this is the final emancipation and freedom. Because once we are free from the nature, the whole intention of the divine to come down, that first sacrifice of the divine, was intended for manifestation. And we all as souls, as sparks of the divine, agreed to do that. So once we are free, we may be sent back to do it again and again until it is done. And this is something to think of, because usually that is what is offered. There's some solution of, dissolving into the spirit. Why should I bother about this nature? As I remember, we were in the Ramana Maharshi's ashram, and there are many sadhus there, all kind of teachers. And one of those sadhus was saying, to hell with all this nature, to hell with all this world. He wants only the divine, as it were. It doesn't work that way. To hell with this world will not do the job.
There's no escape.
There's no escape. It's quite an interesting thing. Yeah? For many people, it's unthinkable in India today, because they're so used to this, as he says, separation on nature and spirit, which religion provides, actually. Religion being formed by the overmental consciousness, not supramental, provides that division. Spirit elsewhere, nature is here. Nature is the problem. Spirit is the solution. This is what we are dealing with. But supramental, he says that, such a beautiful quotation I want to read from your article, if you don't mind. It's somewhere at the end already, where the supramental is being realized more and more. Oh, here it is. As the light of each of these higher powers, higher mind, illumined mind, intuition, overmind, and finally supermind, as the light of each of these higher powers is turned upon the human activities of knowledge, any distinction of sacred and profane, human and divine, begins more and more to fade until it is finally abolished as otios. For whatever is touched and thoroughly penetrated by the divine gnosis is transfigured and becomes a movement of its own light and power, free from turbidity and limitations of the lower intelligence. It is not a separation of some activities, but a transformation of them all by the change of the informing consciousness that is the way of liberation, an ascent of the sacrifice of knowledge to a greater and ever greater light and force. It's not that, or maybe that. But somewhere he says that it becomes more and more strange, this separation of spirit and matter, that it becomes more and more bizarre. How can we separate this world from the divine and say that it is something else? The higher we rise, the more we can see that it is impossible to separate nature and the spirit. And this is something which Sri Aurobindo offers, which no other path is speaking about. Integral yoga. It's really beautiful. Thank you for this essay. It was wonderful. If you have something, some wants to share with you, most probably you read the essay, and if you have some thoughts, please, Teresa, Charles, whoever, Siegfried, Elia, we were discussing with Elia today also on the sacrifice in our classroom. In our Sanskrit studies, we spend half our time discussing the sacrifice.
Vladimir, if I can make a point about what Radhe was referring to, doing something for other human beings, be it charity, what have you. I think if you keep in mind what the Christians believe as well as Hindus, that there is a divinity within us. So when you are doing action for anybody, if you're focused on it as being a sacrifice for the divinity within that person, then your thinking becomes less individualistic. It takes a different dimension. Then it becomes a more genuine offering, because you're offering it to divinity, not that other individual that you may have some expectations from. But if you limit it to just focusing on the divinity, as the offering is the divinity in the other individual, other entity.
Right. Mother spoke about this for Aurovillians. She spoke about collaboration, and she said many times that we should forget our preferences, our own ideas, what is right and what is wrong. She was so insisting on it that it's nearly going away from the path of discovering one's own truth or something. One's own truth is a very small thing in a way. We have to see a bigger picture. We have to allow the bigger truth to penetrate and come down and show us who we truly are, which we do not know. So she insisted on this collaboration. I remember how she put all the hands together of all these parties, which when she left her body went into the court houses, started court cases and war forever, which is not ending even now. So this kind of collaboration never happened because people are so self-obsessed with their own understanding of what is right and what is wrong. It is such a small scale what we know, what is true and what is not true. We are judging the world on a small scale, as she says. Whatever you can do the best, whatever you can do the worst is a very small scale. You have to have a bigger, vaster picture and see everyone as a part of this enterprise. And then work for the world. And that liberates your spirit, liberates your heart, liberates everything. You don't need to be this small being, you know. I was discussing this with Elia today. It's really kind of strange thing. If you imagine that you live only for yourself, how difficult and uninteresting life becomes. Everything. You may have all the resources, and it is so suffocating. But the moment you open up, the moment you do disinterested action for others, you feel immediately that your spirit is liberated. This is the sacrifice.
I think too, in that, that same sentence that we spoke about earlier, it talks about towards a recovered oneness. Right. So to me, this true love and this all sacrifice, this recovered oneness is what? It's our sense of unity with others, right? So the minute we forget our own ego, our own needs, our own wants, our own demands, what we're trying to get out of the world or a situation, and turn our attention towards others, to me, that's the first step of tapping into this kind of secret oneness with this unity that's behind everything, and that it starts to widen, and that sense of separateness or that division that comes with the ego slowly starts to melt. And it is progressive, in my mind, too, as Martha was saying, is that you've got to start with where you are, but anything that turns your attention away from the ego and towards others, either through true love, right, selfless, unconditional love, or through sacrifice, through offering, begins or allows you to participate genuinely in this cycle of giving and receiving, and helps to start to surrender the ego. So it's really a beautiful paper, Martha. I was just so happy when I read this, and as Vladimir said, it just kind of put things in a very, very accessible way about the sacrifice, and brought out some nuances that I hadn't thought about before.
Yes.
So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate your feedback. I think what you say about oneness and sense of separation is so true. When we stop focusing on ourselves and open out, it's a wonderful opening of the heart. And I think the basic human empathy emanates from our inherent sense of oneness. Because we even, we get sad when we read novels in which somebody suffers. We just are connected. And
so for myself, that I've learned along the way that what Teresa's talking about is for me. It's not, in the beginning, it was, I wanted to give my life or things that I owned. And then I realized that it was my own self-judgment. And that the things that I held back and the sacrifice were the things that I valued the most. So if I sacrifice 99% and I hold back 1%, the value that I have on the 1% is greater than the 99%. And that really gets into the whole self-identity conversation. And then the other that I've thought of before is I go back to my limited understanding of the gunas. And for me, Raja Guna is someone, the man that is Rajistic, obeys the law of God because they understand the law and looking for reciprocal action. And Sattvic is simply doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, with no motive of doing that. So then on the conversation of sacrifice, this is a question I'm asking. If the sacrifice is done in order to achieve something or to attain something or to get something back from the sacrifice, is that really a sacrifice?
By the way, in the essay you can find the answer to it. It is there. It's very beautiful, very subtle. Aurobindo touches upon this, that actually, he says, it is not that you get nothing in return. You get the divine presence in return, which changes everything, all relations, all understanding, all the state of being. That's what you are hoping for. You want to give the whole world to the divine, to become the divine. Yeah? We say that we give disinterestedly, without any strings attached. We must do it this way because our ego is always claiming, always trying to get something out of it for ourselves. Okay, I do this for you, and you did do this for me. This is the bargain, which is destroying the sacrifice. And when we do it disinterestedly, our soul knows that we are getting everything by that, everything what we need to get. And that's the best offering which Mother says, let me do what you want me to do. Let me know what you want me to know. Let me be what you want me to be. No claim of one's own at all. This is the highest. So there is no more this strings attached from the vital desire or from the mental preference. So that's why we have to remove those preferences. But our soul knows that we get everything, the best we need for our growth. Can't be otherwise. The divine provides the best. Yeah.
But it's sort of brings into question what Charles is mentioning, is to come back to this idea of all life is yoga, right? All life is sacrifice, whether we know it or not, whether it's done consciously or unconsciously. So no matter what we do, even if it appears for us to be selfish, I'm only going to do this if I get this out of it. In all ways, we're still doing some type, at some level, we're doing a yoga, we're doing a sacrifice. We're just doing it very, very unconsciously. And if we were conscious of it, that would not even come into play. But I have to believe that because of that quote, that no matter what we do, somehow that sacrifice is being done. As selfishly or ugly as it may appear.
It also says, like to what Radhe was saying, like nature kind of takes the sacrifice from us, like for everything we have to do, like work, or even if we are working for family or for ourselves, it's way of nature taking us. Only when we start doing it consciously for the divine, then the conscious yoga begins.
By the way, you find this quotation in this essay, again, on this what you are saying, Dolan. Exactly this quotation where Aurobindo says about this. Interestingly, all these topics are there. Yes,
Vladimir?
Yes.
Are we not all instruments of the divine, from totally unconscious to partially conscious to fully conscious? Each one is evolving, each one of us at our own pace, from a totally unconscious to fully conscious. But we are all instruments of this divine play.
Yeah.
Is that a correct idea?
Absolutely. And that's what Aurobindo says. First, nature pushes us unconsciously. She forces us to do something for others. So we have these instincts of the mother cat who will protect her kittens and die for them, or feed them, or whatever. She gives her life for these kittens, without thinking, without even anything of back thought of some kind of surviving. And at the same time, once we become more aware of this in the mind, then we have a possibility to choose to connect to the divine presence and to see the oneness. That's what he says in the quotation. It's so beautiful. We have more chances. We have more capacity now. From now on, we can choose what to do with our lives. Yeah, it will be very difficult because our nature is inbuilt in this lower consciousness, but still, and until the supramental is there, all this is only provisional. Religions, asceticism, whatever helps to purify the nature and to become aware of the divine presence until it is totally manifested. It is all only the means and not the aim. This we have to remember, that we are dealing with the means, with instruments only.
But I also want to bring another point, like, so I think we'll have to do it a bit consciously, because in India, it's a more collective society where people are doing for each other, and it's a more societal thing. And there are both advantages and disadvantages. Like, advantages is obviously that learning to give to others and to live for others, but there are also sometimes disadvantages that it prevents the individual growth and self-expression. There is a suppression of it. And when we come to the West, we meet a completely different, where we have the maximum possibility and potentiality to progress as a self, as an individual person, and there is no bar, there is complete freedom to totally like to totally experience oneself and to progress oneself, and there is very less bar by the society, but at the same time it stifles that collective thing. So I think there is somewhere, because both has good and bad aspects, so somewhere it is necessary to integrate and do it more as a process of consciousness and offering to the divine, so that neither is suppressed, neither the individual nor the society.
It all depends on the inner attitude, I believe, yeah? You can do seemingly the same things as everybody else does, but your inner connection will be very different. You will look the same as everybody else. There are people, just when you were talking, it reminded me of people who would never give any gift without the camera taking a snap of them giving a gift to others. Yeah, so this is the kind of sacrifice which is very selfish in a way, which needs some other things to, to happen, some other aims. But still, even this, because nature forces them to do this altruism, this kind of, that other businesses have to take care of the environment, of gender equality, and so on and so forth. The whole nature is forcing everyone, every selfish being to become less selfish, ecological disasters, and so on and so forth. Virus, now there's pandemics. Everybody is forced to take care of everyone else. Free vaccination for all. Incredible, unbelievable in a way. You see how nature is dealing with us. And slowly we start liking it, liking that position of being free, taking care of others. Something opens up within us, and we are ready to continue in that way.
That's what reference to what Dolan was saying. That's what the mother tried to create in the ashram, is remove all social obligations, including from the parents. So everybody was only committed to looking to the mother for everything. She did the same in Aurobindo, where you were given the total freedom, which is so antithetical to the Indian society. But she created this unique bubble where girls, boys, long before it became Title IX, which happened in the US, giving girls equal funding for sports and college and all of that. His mother had started that in the 40s. There was no differentiation of any kind, age or gender. But she was setting the goal, I think, to the rest of the world. Total freedom to choose.
It's quite interesting about Aurobindo. So when people wanted to frame Aurobindo with certain behavior, they came to the mother and said, we must have some rules and regulations for Aurobindo. How would we know whom to accept and whom to reject, and to check on people? Some rules. Give us rules. And mother says, as long as there are no rules and regulations, there is still a hope for Aurobindo.
Yeah.
Just think about this. That inner choice, that inner recognition of the truth, that self-giving which cannot be done by force. It has to be done consciously, willingly. That's what Aurobindo says in that quotation in your article. That voluntary, that willing surrender is the key to the speeding up of the whole process. Not by the force of nature, not by the laws that you are made a good citizen because you are afraid to be jailed or something, but because you can't do it otherwise. It comes from you.
And there are many examples in Aurobindo of that kind of dedication and pure giving, joy of giving. I work with some of the individuals there. It's just unbelievable. The joy, that's all they find, whether they are handicapped, whether they are ill, just going out and working out there with Mati Mandar regardless of the conditions.
Yeah.
It's something very, very unusual.
Yeah. This Matrimandir experience, yes. What people say, you would not believe how happy they were to work, hard working, and such a happiness. Maybe you, Robert, would like to mention something, about Aurobindo and the mother. No?
Well, I think just first of all, I'd like to say we talk a lot about sacrifice, and we think of it as we can tend to think of it as a difficult to pass, but we've always got the help of the divine, and there are many. Even I think there was the English mystic poet William Blake. He wrote a poem called "The Hound of Heaven," so that gives the idea that it is the divine that is searching for the aspirant, and it's not just our own effort that's required, because we get a lot of help on the way. So if we take one step towards the divine takes 2 or 3 steps towards us, and that is part of the process too. And I think we need to remember that also. Regarding Aurobindo and the Matrimandir, it was just a wonderful experience. I worked on the Matrimandir for about 8 years, and it was quite miraculous. I mean, most of us had very little experience of construction work, and yet we were just in a pair of shorts. We even went on a structure with bare feet, working with concrete and steel and scaffolding, and just with our spanners and measuring tapes and chalk and so on, marking up where to put the scaffolding and so on. And it was just amazing that it worked out. I mean, it was a total, looking back, it was a constant miracle, quite honestly. Nobody got hurt, or very few, very small accidents, and the work went on despite everything, despite all the setbacks. This was mostly in the 80s, when there was a lot of trouble with the society. And the work kept going on. I mean, it never stopped completely. And it was, I think it was one of the most fulfilling experiences for me, was just coming down at the end of the day. We'd been on the structure for, well, sometimes 7 or 8 hours in the blazing sun, carrying these 6-meter scaffolding poles, men and women, and we were not tired. We came down at the end of the day, and it was the most fulfilling thing, I think. We come down the structure, down these vertical ladders with your bare feet, and you come down to the bottom, and I remember my toes sort of wiggling in the dust around the edge of the structure, and it was feeling totally fulfilled. It's just a wonderful time. And now it's complete. I mean, the work went slowly, sometimes went very slowly, but then it went in great spurts, and now the whole structure is complete. And I think that's one of the wonders of the world, quite frankly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing these moments. They're always very precious, because the presence in the most difficult work, unbelievably not impossible to imagine for any kind of other spiritual. Without spirit, it would not be possible to do. It's with the presence of the mother, it becomes a marvel in itself. So what to say about ordinary life, everyday life? So it could be.
It was karma yoga of the purest form, purest form of karma yoga, just pure joy and pure offering. Just amazing, I think, what people did there.
Yeah. Of course, we are caught by her. We are totally dependent on her. We want only her sweetness in our life. We don't want anything else. We are ready to give. What's wrong to give everything to the divine, to be the divine? What's wrong about this? With this, It's the right thing to do. Anyhow, we can't keep anything for ourselves here in this world. It does not belong to us. It belongs to the divine, so why not to return it and give it back in order to become the divine in everyday moment of our life? Thank you for sharing. This is very moving.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. And thank you for doing all that incredible love of work and giving. I had the honor a couple years ago to be in the Mat Mandir and stay in Aurobindo for a couple months. And it's absolutely wonderful and beautiful. So really thank you for your dedication.
My privilege.
Some more thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really high bar. What do you do?
It's a very high.
How do you follow that one? Let's see. Today
Wonderful examples to keep in mind.
Yeah, but that's great. There's such a high bar, so there may be some inspiration comes.
One interesting observation, a good friend of mine, Josh Brooks, who has been created the Pichandiculam forest, so I've been interacting with him for a number of years now. So he was, the last time they had a cyclone a few years ago, and all trees were destroyed, lots of them in the forest. So, his attitude towards it was so joyous regardless of what happened, and he's observing nature around him, and he told me that the plants that were native to the area
survived,
came back a lot faster than what had been brought from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of observations we are making.
Yes.
Instead of mourning and bemoaning the destruction, you're looking at how it is, nature is coming back in a selective fashion almost.
His philosophy is the indigenous plants. He always wants only indigenous plants.
Right, yeah.
And not these kind of foreign plants brought from other parts.
Now he has these night cameras, so he's seeing a lot of the species, animals, small birds, all coming back to the area as the forestation has grown, and the natural plants have come back in the area. You're seeing life coming back in different forms, It's been there over 40 years. Just talking to him a couple of weeks ago, he's had some back problems. He's walking with 2 sticks, but he said he has just spent the whole day at the Matri Mandir, working around the garden and stuff,
Jose is not well, you say?
Yeah, he has had some health issues, Yeah. It's inspiration. Every time I go, I spend a day with him in Aurobindo, this place, He's done some wonderful work with the school also, that is open.
If you see him, say hi from me. I
will be calling him. I usually connect with him once a month, so I will definitely tell him that you said hi. Sweet man.
Yeah. We had a joke in Aurobindo. I would not go into it, but it doesn't matter. It's anyhow, when you grow such community and you can see the beauty in every aspect of Aurobindo's life, that presence of the mother on Matri Mandir, which Robert was mentioning, can be present in every other activity, in the afforestation, in water conservation, you name it, just go and do something with the land, because that focal point, that presence of the divine is there. And many people who come to Aurobindo, they feel it. It's independent from anybody else. It's just there. You just enter and you cycle through Aurobindo and you feel that presence. And you don't know what it is, but it feels so good, so at home. You know? In the morning when you drive your motorbike, it is such a pleasant, blissful state. I can't express it. Everything, sun, wind, forest, just like in the paradise of some kind.
Growing up there, that part was basically barren red soil.
And that red soil, beautiful.
To go with my friend, we go bike riding to that area. You know, there was some cashew trees. It was basically it, but very, very hot, very barren. You know, it's amazing when you go there. You can, from what I remember, my childhood is just different. Totally amazing.
Siegfried, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, you are getting very nostalgic. And this morning I was riding with my motorbike. I have a motorbike for this year, 1 year ago, and it's most of the same motorbike which I rent when I was in Aurobindo. And today I was riding the motorbike without helmet, like when I was in Aurobindo. And I was feeling the wind in my hair, my skin, like when I was there. And then with this, I want to introduce, we can experience Aurobindo in everywhere where we are, because finally it's in us, this kind of experience or predisposition to experience the presence is in us. Then we can activate this feeling everywhere. I'm experienced here. Even I have a domo in the garden, which I call Machimandir as well. And now I want to use the chance to talk, to offer my interpretation of the sacrifice, the topic of today. And I feel some similarities. Thank you. With the great void, with emptiness, and what I'm feeling every time more close and close when we are talking about sacrifice, aspiration, descending, the dissolution of the ego sense, or the purification of the egocentric concept. All of these processes are like a tantric process of discovering the complementarity of everywhere, which is the great void. In essence, is the great void of the egocentric point of view. Is a great void where everything, every phenomenon, every soul is included. It's not an empty great void. It's a full great void of everything at everywhere. And what I intuit in my understanding of sacrifice is this is a challenge experience in the daily life, in the every second when you are working, when you are breathing. You can have the chance to experience that. If you invite yourself to lose the egocentric, then it becomes this experience of, you can see the sacrifice in the fire of the breathing in, breathing out, but you can experience the space, a limited space in you. And this is what I experience when I make this, it's like when you see the stars in the night, you can see this twin light. Is it twin light? Is the proper word?
Twinkle little star, yeah?
Twinkle or something, I don't know the word. But, sometimes you are full in the mechanic, full in the thinking process, full in your personal existence, your ego sense, but sometimes it's a click. You can lose absolutely yourself and find the balance between these divergent attitudes is a nice dance. Try this dance to be open to the great void and to be open to the mechanical of what we are in this human constitution with this kind of conditioning, procedure and material, chemical, physical reactions which we are embodied. No? And what I want to say in this interpretation, which I personally have, becomes a question: who is experience the sacrifice? Who is there? Who is? And the answer became is the psychic being. If we want to know the psychic being, we only have to make us this personal question: who is making the sacrifice? Who is open to the challenge to be in the great void, abysm, and fulfilled? And then you find your own psychic being who is ready for that, who is looking for that challenge. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Siegfried. Yeah. The great void, nirvana, silence, is needed to remove all the noises from nature, from the vital, from preferences. It purifies our perception, and then maybe the inner being may be perceived or become tangible, its presence, and may be found and come to the front. Thank you for sharing these ideas, these thoughts. They're very valuable to all of us. Please.
May I just add just a moment onto Siegfried's conversation, because I'm new to this. But the reason I joined the group was to be with you after watching some of the videos. And what happened in some of the videos, I would just feel very deeply things, like feel in my body. And I think it has to do with words, right? And my observation is just, like I've heard the words interchange, sacrifice and surrender. And to me, just from where I come from, for me, it's hard to be close to the word sacrifice, because I feel like it's other, and I feel like it's giving up something, not myself, like sacrificing and slaughter, and like the common, outside of this, it's mainly common. It's a word if I feel it in my body, just, go down. But when Teresa was speaking, to me, that was more of a surrender, and it just felt so good. You could feel there, and more just of a flow and kind of being in flow with life. And the same thing with the word nature, and probably just feel it differently. But I feel, that we're constantly, we're in relation with nature. We are nature. So maybe that's a different type of nature that we're talking about here. So I'm just sharing this as a perspective of, someone that doesn't know this very well. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Actually, the same discussion we had with Elia about the same topic, that for her sacrifice was a very damaging and killing for get something done for oneself, for one's ego, and or giving something which you love for the sake of getting something else, which you must get. That's usually the idea. But sacrifice is making sacred, so to say. It's actually just the opposite. It's very bright. It's like you're inviting higher powers of your universal consciousness to come and take your burden, as Teresa was mentioning. You can sacrifice not only good things, but especially things which are problematic for us. And they are taken by this presence and changed. And Mother says that the real sadhaks, the real ones, are those who bring to me their problems and difficulties, and not the best things. Who do not want to see only to be seen as good ones, but come as weak and in difficulty for help. And that is the way of also making everything changing in your life, making it sacred, offering your difficulty to the divine, asking for help as a child would ask the mother. And you will receive it. It will be there. You will be surprised how simple it is and luminous, and has nothing to do with mutilation or some kind of, killing or blood sacrifice, killing the goat for the sake of something. It's not the thing.
Yes, and everything you just said, I feel that it's just associated with a different word.
I know.
It's just the word. So like having being able to dialogue and see what comes into the circle, is, I think, a real gift that you offer. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, before we end, I gotta, everybody, and Kimberly, you tied it up with a bow on it for me, because this morning I was talking with Vladimir about exactly what you said. It's like, what does this mean? This word sacrifice is just triggering and it doesn't make sense. And when I'm listening to everybody today talk about sacrifice and receiving and giving and the flow, Martha, that you had mentioned, and it's like I can kind of get a feeling of that. But this conversation here has brought more than just the words to me, because the words I've heard, I got the words, I know the words, but there's a feeling here. And Vladimir and Radhe, this is really nice to have everybody on the screen for the whole time, and no pages of words, and just having conversations. And this is beautiful, and it's been just an amazing experience. And I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Thank you, Elia. Thank you, everyone. So I will close with mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Namaste.
Namaste.
Okay.